Cardiorespiratory system. Now, I want you to think of it as the cardiopulmonary system because the quicker that you can equate the two, the better you're going to have an understanding of this. Now, this is actually two systems combined. We're talking about your cardiovascular system, which is going to be your heart, blood vessels. And then we're also going to be talking about the respiratory system, which is the lungs. Now, I'm sure you know that the heart is a structure that pumps blood throughout the body. But you also have to remember that the heart is a muscle. We have three different kinds of muscle in our body. So we have skeletal muscle, which is involuntary. We have smooth muscle, which lines the inside of our stomach and intestines for digestion, which is obviously involuntary. We also have cardiac muscles, which is going to be the heart, and that's obviously involuntary. Now, as personal trainers, we need to understand that a better conditioned heart beats fewer times per minute. And somebody who's in better shape is going to have a lower resting heart rate. Now, the average resting heart rate is 70 to 80 beats per minute. Now let's understand how the heart works. The heart beats through a series of electrical impulses that are governed by essentially two nodes. The first one is your sinoatrial node, or SA node, which is essentially your heart's pacemaker. The sinoatrial node, or the SA node, initiates the impulse for the heart to beat through the atria. Now the second node, your AV node, is your atrioventricular node. Now, the AV node receives the impulse from the SA node to be delivered via the ventricles. Now it's going to be very important when you take the test to understand that the SA node initiates the impulse for the heart to beat, and the AV node receives the impulse from the SA node to be delivered through the ventricles. All this talk might seem a little confusing, but we're going to break it down in a much simpler way to understand. So we're going to go over the pathway of the blood and how it moves through the heart to the lungs, etc., and make it simple to understand. It can get very confusing when you're reading textbooks trying to understand all this, but we're going to break it down so that you can understand it like the back of your hand. All right? Now, the heart's job isn't just to beat. Its job is also to take deoxygenated blood that's been used from the muscles, deliver it through the lungs, and then send it back to the body after it's been reoxygenated again. Now, I've sent you a diagram of how this pathway works so you can visually see it, but I'm also going to break it down and explain how it moves throughout the heart and how the deoxygenated blood becomes oxygenated again and gets sent out to the body. Now, the first thing we want to do is take the heart and we want to break it down into the upper and lower half. The upper half of the heart is going to be the atria, and the lower half of the heart is going to be the ventricles. There's also going to be the left side and right side, and each one of these has a specific job to do. Now, you might be wondering why the left side is on the right side's on the left. That is because whenever you're learning about the heart, they're teaching it as if you're looking at it from another person. So not your right, it's going to be their right. That's why it looks flipped around. You're going to need to understand this because they're going to try to trick you on the exam and put your right when really you should be looking at it the opposite way. Now, to simplify the heart, you want to remember that the right side receives and the left side leaves. The right side receives the deoxygenated blood and the left side reoxygenates and lets it leave the body. Right side receives, left side leaves. And whenever you're looking at a diagram, whenever you see a bluish hue, that signifies blood flow moving throughout the body. So whenever you see blue, know that that is where the blood is. Let's go over how blood moves through the heart now. All right, so step one, the deoxygenated blood that's been utilized by the muscles in the body enters the right atrium. The right atrium then sends the blood down to the right ventricle. And the job of the right ventricle is to send the blood to the lungs to pick up oxygen, because whenever we inhale oxygen from the environment, we pick up oxygen, and that oxygen gets enriched into the blood. The left atrium then takes the oxygenated blood and sends it to the left ventricle. The left ventricle then sends the oxygenated blood to the rest of the body via the aorta, which is the largest artery in the body. And this is a continual process. Blood is continuously being stripped of oxygen, being sent to the heart to be then sent over to the lungs to pick up oxygen and sent back out to the body. All of this is definitely going to be covered on the test. So you just want to understand that the blood enters through the right side of the heart. It is then sent over to the lungs where it is oxygenated, sent back to the left side of the heart where it is then pumped out to the rest of the body. Now, the blood is a life-sustaining liquid that is circulated throughout the body, and it has a lot of different functions. It's 55% plasma and 45% a combination of red and white blood cells and platelets. Now, the function of blood is going to be to transport oxygen and nutrients to the cells and tissues, remove waste. It also delivers hormones to tissues, and it moves with heat throughout the body. This is why areas that have lower circulation tend to be cold, and areas that have higher circulation tend to be more warm. And finally, it also helps to protect the body by clotting, so you don't just bleed out to death. Now, the blood is going to travel through blood vessels, and we have 3 different kinds. We have arteries, capillaries, and veins. Now, arteries carry blood away from the heart, just like the aorta. Veins carry blood to the heart, and then the capillaries are going to be an exchange site for the gases and nutrients. Now, if we go back to the pathway of the heart, when the blood is being sent from the body to the heart to get oxygen, it's being sent from veins, because remember, veins send blood to the heart. And then when the blood leaves the right ventricle and gets sent over to the lungs to get oxygen, it leaves the heart from the pulmonary arteries. Because remember, arteries carry blood away from the heart. And remember, whenever you see the word pulmonary, they're referring to the lungs. When we're taking blood away from the heart and bringing it to the lungs, that's going to be the pulmonary artery. And then after it's picked up oxygen from the lung, it's going to be sent back to the heart from pulmonary veins. Because remember, when blood goes back to the heart, it goes via veins. And if it's coming from the lungs, lungs is pulmonary, pulmonary veins. I hope that's not too confusing. Just remember, pulmonary means lungs, veins sending blood to the heart, arteries take blood away from the heart. And then when the blood is being sent away from the heart to be sent over to the body, it does so through the aorta, which is the largest artery, because remember, it's going away from the heart. And then when it comes to the respiratory system, the textbook goes over it in a pretty confusing way. The main thing you're going to want to remember is that inspiration is inhaling and expiration is exhaling. Now, you're definitely going to want to know the muscles that are associated with inspiration and expiration. For inspiration, the muscles that are going to be involved are the external intercostals, your diaphragm, your sternocleidomastoids, and your pec minor. Now, this is going to be very important for later down the road when we talk about overactive muscles. For instance, the overactive muscles that are tight when people are doing rows are the same muscles that are used for inhalation. So we're going to want to be aware of this down the road. Now, the muscles necessary for expiration or exhaling are going to be your internal intercostals and the abdomen. And the last thing you're going to want to remember from that chapter is that the VO2 max is the best way to indicate respiratory fitness, as it gives you the max rate of oxygen transport during exercise. However, as personal trainers, we're not going to need to use that because we can't use that in the field because it's not practical. We can't just hook people up to VO2 machines. So you will need to understand that the VO2 max is important, but we won't need to calculate any equations for that because it's not something that we're going to be using. Now, lastly, you're going to want to understand the term diffusion. And just like earlier, don't let this fool you. Diffusion on the test, they're going to try to make it seem like it could be some sort of way to diffuse an argument. In this regard, the only time that we are going to be talking about diffusion is when we're talking about oxygen being supplied to the body, not trying to calm down your drunk uncle. All right? That's all you need to know. All right, so that is it. That is the entire cardiorespiratory system in a nutshell. Study that. There's a lot of information in there, but watch this over and over and over. Take a look at the reading materials I sent you. It will be going over the next one very soon.